tous et à toutes et bienvenue à notre conseil, votre conseil. Je suis Sue Montgomery, je suis la mairesse de CDN-NDG. J'aimerais reconnaître que nous sommes en territoire autochtone, laquelle n'a jamais été cédé. Je reconnais la nation Ganagaraga comme gardienne des terres et des eaux sur lesquelles nous sommes aujourd'hui. We respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future in our ongoing relationships with Indigenous people and other peoples within the Montreal community. I encourage all of us to support and join our Indigenous brothers and sisters in the struggle to protect the lands and waters of this earth. I'd like to thank everyone for watching today online, even though it's just a couple of days before Christmas. It's a sign that democracy is thriving in our community. Unfortunately, COVID, of course, is still with us and getting worse. So we can't celebrate Christmas as we normally do, but just continue, please, to keep your distance, wash your hands, and follow all the rules from the province. Maintenant, laissons-nous penser à ceux et celles qui sont décédés de COVID-19. Ils ne sont pas que des chiffres, ils sont des êtres humains avec famille et proches. Et maintenant, j'aimerais vous présenter mes collègues, M. Lionel Perez de Darlington.
Bonjour tout le monde. Hello everybody.
M. Peter McQueen d'NDG.
Bonjour tout le monde. Thanks for being with us today.
Madame Magda Popiano de Côte-Neige.
Bonjour, thank you to be being with us today.
Mr. Christian Arsenault from Loyola.
Bonjour tout le monde, thanks for joining us today.
Et Monsieur Marvin Rotran de Snowden, est-ce que vous êtes là? Oui.
Good morning tout le monde. Merci pour être ici et mes meilleurs voix pour la saison.
Et j'aimerais ainsi présenter notre directeur d'arrondissement, M. Stéphane Plante, et je vous demande de présenter vos collègues. Il n'y a pas beaucoup aujourd'hui.
Non, aujourd'hui, on est à effectif réduit. Alors, bonjour, Madame la mairesse, Madame la conseillère, Messieurs les conseillers. Avec moi, Madame Julie Faraldo-Boulet, secrétaire recherchiste. Bonjour. Alors voilà, petite équipe aujourd'hui. On va répondre à vos questions.
Merci. 10.02, adopter l'ordre du jour. J'aimerais ajouter 10.06, correspondance. Alors, je propose. Et c'est appuyé par M. McQueen.
Excuse-moi, oui, j'appuie.
Oui, OK. Adopté. 10.03, mot d'ouverture. Alors, est-ce que quelqu'un veut parler? Moi, j'ai aucun mot d'ouverture.
Oui, j'ai quelque chose.
OK. Le premier, c'est Magda. Voulez-vous parler?
Merci, Madame la mairesse. Non, je souhaitais seulement joindre ma voix à la vôtre, souhaiter des joyeuses fêtes de fin d'année, de partager avec vous les sympathies avec la famille, les familles qui ont été durement touchées, de renforcer aussi le message que il faut respecter les règles, on va s'en sortir, mais il faut vraiment respecter les règles sanitaires en place. Merci, Madame la mairesse.
Merci.
Et souhaiter à mes collègues une bonne année, en paix et en sérénité et en santé. Merci.
Monsieur McQueen?
Merci, Madame la mairesse. So I would also like to say, you know, those numbers are just not going down. Hopefully they'll start going down in the months ahead with the vaccination. We're all hoping and praying for that. So please take care with your families. J'aimerais parler un peu des patinoires extérieures. C'est clair que j'étais un peu déçu que les patinoires extérieures n'étaient pas prêts pour ce week-end qui vient de passer. Il a fait froid la semaine dernière. Je comprends que c'est un challenge, un défi technique d'arroser quand il n'y a pas déjà une couche de neige sur la patinoire, je comprends ça. Alors, je cherche des solutions. Je vois qu'il y a une question dans les questions du public sur la question. Alors, je veux que vous, les services, peut-être préparer une réponse pour plus tard quand la question vient dans dans les questions du public sur qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire quand nous avons un début d'hiver comme cette année où un gros froid arrive pour une semaine en décembre et fin décembre même et il n'y a pas une couche de neige. Qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire pour que ces patinoires soient ouvertes pour qu'il y ait les jeunes de notre quartier durant ces temps de COVID très difficiles peuvent avoir un peu d'exercice dans tous les
Monsieur McQueen, je crois que ça, c'est pour les périodes de questions. Merci.
Parfait. And I want to wish a happy Merry Christmas and happy holidays to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Perez?
Merci, Madame Perez. Je vais évidemment également souhaiter à toute la population, à tous les résidents, résidentes de Côte-de-Neige de Femme-Grâce, de joyeuses fêtes, une bonne année, santé, santé, santé. Nous avons vu à quel point que la santé est tellement importante cette année. Alors, soyons vigilants. Soyez gardés au courant. Il va y avoir des lieux pour prendre les vaccins dans notre arrondissement. Notamment, je comprends que ça va se faire avec le CIUS, évidemment, dans l'Arena Buildernin. Donc, je pense qu'il faut rester à l'afflux. Évidemment, les priorités vont être déterminées par le CIUS, mais ceux de 80 ans et plus, ceux dans les CHSLD, contactez le 811 pour avoir vraiment plus de détails là-dessus. Happy holidays to everybody. I will reserve my comments on the Godfrey project during the intervention. I will just quickly want to highlight 2 points from last week's City Council. Number one is we were able to get approval of the land transfer, the land purchase by the city from the NDG YMCA with the proposal that I had made, which was to have the YMCA commit to 7 years. So it's a huge, huge win for NDGers, for people who want services. And it shows to what extent that when you have city elected officials that are willing to think outside the box, who know the lay of the land, who don't want to overreach, but are willing to put citizens first, these are the kind of results we had. I'd like to thank Marvin Rocha and Sue Montgomery for supporting me in this proposal, in this amendment. And obviously, I'll let the ones who voted against it speak for themselves, which ultimately voted in favor of it. So huge win for YMCA, for NDG, and I'm very proud of that. Secondly, a motion that Ensemble Montréal actually tabled and was adopted unanimously was requiring a moratorium on any future police station closures or mergers. I know it won't directly affect NDG and Station 11, but the second part of our motion that was adopted unanimously calls for a full public consultation on the risk coverage map for the entire island of Montreal. So before anything else is going to be done, well, we're going to have that public consultation that I had requested and my colleagues had requested also after all this time. Now, the opportunity is that now we're going to be able to get the actual data that we've been promised, and we're going to be able to question the SPVM on the merits of closing Station 9. And now, perhaps, with the help of the public and with me pushing, as well as others, maybe we're going to get them to change their mind. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but at least now we have a process, we have a governance, and it's thanks to my team and myself from Ensemble Montréal. So I'm very, very happy that we'll have that public consultation that we've been asking for almost a year now. On that, I'll pass to my colleagues who want to speak further. Et puis, si jamais il y a quoi que ce soit, n'hésitez pas à me rejoindre. Merci.
Monsieur Plante, avez-vous...
Oui, je m'excuse si vous permettez. Au niveau du site de vaccination, M. Perez, je voudrais juste faut comprendre qu'on est en discussion actuellement avec les autorités et il n'y a rien de décidé. Alors, il y a des sites qui sont étudiés. Celui que vous avez nommé est un site potentiel, mais on voudrait juste faire attention à ne pas nommer de nom d'endroit parce que c'est vraiment pas encore officiel pour l'instant.
Je m'en excuse. Je remercie M. Plante pour la précision. Je m'en excuse. Donc, j'encourage tout le monde à attendre les annonces officielles et contacter le 811 pour toute précision. Merci.
Voilà. Merci, M. Perez. M. Arsenault.
Merci, Madame la mairesse. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And j'aimerais tout simplement faire écho de ce que mes collègues ont déjà dit pour des souhaits d'un temps des vacances rempli de santé surtout. Ils ont déjà dit, mais je vais le dire encore plus clairement, les chiffres augmentent. Hein? The numbers are climbing, and there's only one real explanation for that, which is that people are not being careful. And I'm sure we've all seen it. On a tous vu à plusieurs moments des gens qui ne portent pas leur masque de la bonne façon, des gens qui sont carrément agressifs quand on leur dit qu'il faut faire attention. Alors, soyons pas ces personnes-là. Even if we haven't been directly touched on a family level by the virus, we probably know someone who has. So let's think of those people that have suffered this year, and let's do better, because we can do better. J'aimerais aussi, très rapidement, moi aussi, je vais garder mes commentaires sur le dossier pour le dossier lui-même. J'aimerais juste exprimer en ce temps des fêtes mes remerciements et ma reconnaissance envers tous ceux et celles qui ont pris contact au cours des dernières 2 semaines pour exprimer votre appui suite à ma décision de voter contre le budget de l'administration Plante et de me siéger comme indépendant pour le reste du mandat. I have heard over the last 2 weeks from people that I hadn't spoken to in months, if not years, people from Projet, people from opposition parties, people who are more political, less political, people who have often disagreed with me on a range of other issues as they impact our district and our borough. But on this, everyone seems to be on the same page, which is that 3 years of trying to work with the administration and giving them the benefit of the doubt that they were governing with our interests in mind was more than enough. And it's time to try other avenues. So I look forward to hearing from you over the next few months. It's obviously going to be an intense year next year. But first, let's take some much needed rest. And s'il y a certains d'entre vous qui ont des questions pour moi, qui sont préoccupés, j'ai déjà pris contact avec toutes sortes de monde qui avaient des questions par rapport à ma décision. Alors, la porte est toujours ouverte et j'ai hâte d'entretenir avec vous au cours des prochains mois. Merci.
Merci, M. Osino. M. Vautrin.
Bonjour tout le monde. Premièrement, mes meilleures voix pour la saison. C'est un peu inhabituel d'avoir une séance spéciale de conseil d'arrondissement 3 jours avant Noël, mais on est ici et je profite de mes meilleures voix, mais aussi d'inviter tout le monde à être très, très prudent. On est toujours dans pleine pandémie et on doit suivre toutes les consignes de santé publique. Comme M. Perez a dit, un vaccin est là, on commence à vacciner les gens, mais ça va prendre des mois. Santé publique va annoncer les priorités et va annoncer où on peut avoir ce vaccin et en quel ordre. Jusqu'à ce temps-là, j'invite tout le monde à être très, très prudent. J'aimerais confirmer que le conseil de ville a ratifié 3 nouveaux toponymes dans le district de Snowden, dans le secteur Triangle. Je suis très fier que la consultation que nous avons menée en 2016, les noms que nous avons envoyés à la ville-centre être acceptés et dont le parc Sadie Bronfman était nommé pour le nouveau parc au coin de Buchan et Victoria. Le passage Yoline-Jumel était nommé pour le passage qui va relier la rue Buchan vers la station métro Namur et Place de Triangle va être un lieu de rassemblement pour les gens proches de mountain sites. Donc, ça, c'est des bonnes nouvelles. Moins bonne, il n'y a aucun argent dans le budget, au moins dans les prochaines quelques années, pour le développement du site Hippodrome. La consultation qui a été menée par la ville, où l'Office Consultation publique a dit qu'il y a des lacunes, nous comprendrons maintenant aucun argent pour l'infrastructure. Il n'y a rien en 2021, 2022, 2023, et le seul argent est vers 2026, 2030 pour aménager les abords de la station métro Namur qui est à 800 mètres de le site hippodrome. Donc, je suis vraiment dessus et je vais soulever ça encore au conseil municipal. Nous avons appris aussi qu'il n'y a pas rien pour le prolongement de Boulevard Cavendish. I asked a question about this at City Council, and the person in charge, Eric Allen Caldwell, said, no, the administration didn't support Cavendish Extension. It was a project from a different century. It was clear when he spoke they didn't understand what the Cavendish Extension is. There's $245 million in the capital budget, but almost all of it's towards 2030. A capital budget, the first year is firm, the second year sort of firm, the third year is an intention, the fourth year is a wish. After that, it's a fantasy. So there's no money for the Cavendish Extension. I'll be working with Lionel Perez and others to bring this up for public discussion. Montreal's made public commitments that's not living up to. Allow me also to say that the City Council had adopted my motion to study the possibility of a satellite police station in NDG after the closing of PDQ 11 that was done by the city administration. They committed to coming back to council in 4 months after my motion, which should put it at the February council meeting. We're going to try to hold them to some commitments. Clearly, the population of NDG does not accept that we are the largest neighborhood in the city without a local police station. Let me also say that I enjoyed working with Lionel Perez on the Y dossier. I'm going to give Lionel 75% of the credit. He did most of the spade work. I was involved and I worked on it, but he wrote the motion and he did the research. We divided up certain tasks that Sue Montgomery signed on as well. I'm pleased that not only Borough Council adopted it, but City Council adopted our amendment as well. And I will close by saying, pour Christian Arsenault, j'apprécierais le courage de quitter le parti en pouvoir pour devenir indépendant dans la dernière année de mandat. For those watching, Christian's already acting like a nonpartisan councillor. He's the seconder of one of my motions in January. He would never have done that a month ago. But now, while we can disagree on certain things, and we will probably disagree on the Godfrey file today, at least we're working together in the public interest on other files. Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Mr. Rautran. On passe maintenant à 10.04, questions du public.
Oui, donc la période de questions et de demandes du public lors d'une séance extraordinaire est de 30 minutes. Les citoyens et citoyennes ont eu la possibilité de transmettre leurs questions via le formulaire en ligne jusqu'à 16h30 hier, le 21 décembre. Donc, il y a 27 personnes qui nous ont soumis des questions et commentaires dans ce délai. Donc, on a procédé à un tirage au sort avec alternance hommes-femmes. Et donc, un maximum de 3 questions sur un même sujet est autorisé. Si d'autres questions sur ce sujet sont soumises, elles pourront être lues à la fin de la période de questions si le temps le permet. Donc, j'invite la mairesse à expliquer la procédure en anglais.
Merci. So our question period, because it's a special council, it's only 30 minutes as opposed to 90. People had until yesterday at 4:30 to submit their questions. And the order is determined by a draw, and we alternate man, woman. We also only accept 3 questions on any one topic in order to be able to get to as many questions as possible on various topics. So with that, we will start with the first question from Yasmine Gandour.
Oui, donc qui concerne le parc Le Duc sur Godfrey. Étant donné que ce projet affectera directement les résidents et les services de garde locaux, ainsi que le bien-être de beaucoup de jeunes enfants sous l'âge de 5 ans, pourquoi n'avons-nous pas été consultés spécifiquement sur la perte potentielle de places de stationnement qui en affectera autant parmi nous? Notre service de garde, 140 places, ainsi que celui d'à côté, 80 places, et les résidents sur le boulevard Grand vous ont déjà communiqué que ceci est un grand problème quotidien et que nous devrons avoir une plateforme pour nous faire entendre avant que vous preniez de grandes décisions comme celle-ci. Merci.
Merci, Madame Gandour. Je vais passer la question à Monsieur Arsenault, donnant que c'est son projet. Il a parlé là-dessus depuis mars cette année. Alors, je passe la parole à Monsieur Arsenault.
Merci, Madame la mairesse. Et merci pour la question. Je sais qu'on a été en contact brièvement, mais il me semble que beaucoup de gens En fait, beaucoup de monde pose la même question, que ce soit par écrit, par courriel, lors de cette période de questions. Alors, la réponse est fort simple. Le dossier que nous adoptons aujourd'hui est justement pour planifier et tenir les séances de consultation. À date, tout ce qu'on a fait a été une conception initiale comme point de départ pour discussion et consultation à l'arrondissement. Mais avant qu'on fait quoi qu'il soit, on s'entend qu'il faut consulter. Alors, ce qu'on va faire au cours des prochains mois, on va tenir plusieurs séances de consultation auprès des résidents avoisinants, ainsi que les garderies, les groupes communautaires, les institutions qui sont dans le coin. Alors, cette question de pourquoi est-ce qu'on n'a pas été consulté, c'est justement parce qu'on arrive à la phase de consultation et, comme la mairesse et moi, on tous les deux dit à répétition, il n'y a rien qui va se faire sans que les résidents et parties prenantes soient consultés avant. Merci pour la question.
Merci. Alors, numéro 2 vient de Adam Wertheimer. My question is for Mr. Perez. You have recently called for the STM to decrease its service frequency, presumably to save on operational costs. In particular, you were quoted as saying, do we need a bus every 5 or 7 minutes on every line of the STM? I doubt it. That's a quote. I was disappointed hearing an elected official say this and was hoping for some clarification. How can you justify, sorry, my neighbor is doing her housework upstairs and it's causing a lot of noise. I hope nobody hears that, but it's distracting. Sorry, the first question, how can you justify cutting already crowded bus service during a pandemic, especially considering that the actual frequency of bus routes in your district, aside from the 165 and 161 during rush hour, are 25 to 40 minutes? 2, you have also called for budget cuts to the REV, which represents a fraction of a % of the budget and was a main platform point for Projet Montréal. Why single public and active transportation out when something like the SPVM is allocated significantly more? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wertheimer, for your question. Very important, topical questions. And thank you for the opportunity to provide a little bit more clarification like you're asking. I gave an interview last week asking about exactly what should the STM be doing. It's facing a crisis. In 2020, 70% of its ridership went down, 70%. And unfortunately, the STM and the administration are acting as if, you know, it's the status quo that we should be going forward. And what I said was, we have to look at how to manage our finances. We cannot, it's not sustainable to go and do that. Now, in your question, you're mentioning, you know, why should we cut on already crowded bus service? I never said anything of the sort. Obviously, any kind of line, whether it be metro or bus that is crowded, should maintain its level of service. But 70% of the ridership has gone down. So obviously there are some lines that have significantly reduced, ridership. And that's what I'm talking about. Now we have to find an equilibrium, a balance. We have to ensure that there's a little bit more space, obviously, than normal. But it's a question of, finding an equilibrium. And Toronto has done it. Longueuil has done it. No one is talking about slashing the budget and, going and eliminating service completely. It's a question of making responsible adjustments. Regarding your second question, I think it's really relevant. We proposed a motion at the last budget, an amendment that said that we should perhaps go ahead and actually buy body cams for police officers on the ground. Now, according to the evaluation, to the estimate that was in a few years back, which we think is too much, but we took that amount so there wouldn't be a debate. It'd be $17 million in total in terms of purchasing of the actual cameras. And what we said is that over the next 10 years, the administration wants to spend $200 million on bike paths, $200 million. Can we take $17 million of those $200 million to buy body cams? Can we find some kind of an equilibrium? We're looking about reallocating the agglomeration budget. Now, I'm not going to get into technicalities. It's not simple to get a certificate of the treasurer.
Conclusion, Monsieur Perez, s'il vous plaît.
Donc, to conclude, you know, it'd be my pleasure to be able to speak with you and to give you more details. It's a question of finding that balance. 17 million for body cams out of $200 million, I think is something that is reasonable. Thanks.
Merci. Numéro 3, Elizabeth 4. We have a problem with consultation in the borough. My own councillor, Christian Arsenault, is never present in my district and is now working on a costly project no one wants. Other projects this year proceeded without consultation and backfired in a big way. Instead of all these extraordinary borough council meetings, we should look to a virtual town hall model in the new year while keeping regular borough council meetings. These town halls should be interactive and devoted to discussion with citizens. They will carry the same cost to taxpayers as extraordinary meetings. This would allow council members to have direct contact with citizens and listen to their concerns before taking action and would be a better use of taxpayers' dollars. Can we adopt this model for 2021? Thank you, Ms. Four. We can always do better in our speaking with residents. As you know, I'm on social media all the time. I'm happy to speak with anyone, and if you send me an email, I will respond. I don't know if Mr. Arsenault wants to respond to this about the project or.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the question, Ms. Four. Obviously, it won't surprise you to know that I disagree with most of the premises of your question. For starters, obviously the people of Loyola will be able to decide in November of next year whether they feel I've been present enough, but having spent my entire life in NDG, I don't think that will be a ballot question. More importantly, though, again, there has been a lot of misunderstanding about the order in which things are being done in this project. And it's understandable because we don't normally operate this way at the City of Montreal or at the borough. People have been saying that there's a lack of consultation. That's because we have not yet arrived at the consultation phase. So no money has been spent on this project and nothing will be done until residents and parties, stakeholder parties have been consulted. That's the whole idea behind the process. In fact, for this 3-year project, potentially up to 3 years, assuming that people like what we experiment with, there will be several rounds of consultation. So to say that there wasn't consultation is, in a sense, a truism because we just haven't gotten there yet. But to say that it's disrespectful of the process is really jumping the gun. And I encourage people who live in the immediate area who will actually be impacted, unlike those living on the other side of the district who've decided they don't like it, to get involved during the consultation process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, number 4 is from Clifford Schwartz. So this will, why is turning Godfrey into pedestrian-only street necessary? And why weren't the residents that this affects consulted? Yes, some kids play street hockey there, and I have played ball with my son there, but the odd car that rarely comes by is hardly a deterrent. So much so that we all continue to use it for that purpose. $800,000 is complete and utter waste of money that will merely be an inconvenience for those that park there, that live or work there, church, espace knox, several home entrances and garages, or those that use it to get to and from their homes. Please don't do this and spend the money on things that are necessary. So I'll pass this question to Mr. Arsenault as well.
Hello, thank you again for the question. As I said before, this is something that's being pitched as a proposal, and there's nothing, I can't emphasize this enough, there's nothing that is concrete. The whole point of this project, of this program at the city, is to pitch an idea and then sit down with residents, consult with residents and stakeholders, and see if we can make it more interesting, if it's something that people would like to try out. And the costs of the project, especially in the first 2 years when we're experimenting, are very low and being picked up in large part by Center City. So if we hold these consultations and the overwhelming response is we don't want this, then that's a legitimate response. And I'm prepared to go along with that. But what's important to me is that we do this exercise, that we hold this consultation in the first place and solicit residents' engagement to see if we can come up with a better project.
Thank you.
So thanks for the question, and I hope to see you
Thank
there.
you. Thank you. Number 5 is Tanya Eichhoff. Keep Sue Montgomery hired Main Street Research to conduct a telephone poll with the mayor's recorded questions. Was this paid for with party funds or with the mayor's discretionary budget? How were the phone numbers obtained? This poll was not done by Keep Sue Montgomery. It was done by the mayor because I wanted to find out, get feedback from residents in order to better do my job. Every city councillor has $20,000 a year in research and support funds. So the poll was funded by that, and the numbers were obtained by the company that I hired. Number 6, it's changes to Godfrey. I think this is the third one on Godfrey. Does everybody agree with that? Have there been any studies concerning the increased congestion around Grand and Godfrey due to the elimination of 20 parking drop-off spots for the 2 daycares in the area? Morning and afternoon rush hour congestion is already terrible and will get much worse if Godfrey is blocked and the parking spaces are eliminated. How will this be managed? Again, I'm going to turn this question to Mr. Arsenault since this is his project.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do think that was the 4th question on the topic, but I'm happy to answer. I could be wrong, but I've already answered 3 questions on the topic. That being said, I do not think that a traffic study was done yet. If this is something that's a concern for residents, then obviously it's something that can be discussed during the consultation phase. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. We have 3 different phases of consultation planned before anything even happens. What I would also note, as anyone who knows the area is aware of, it's not just a question of parking space. There's concern about the removal of parking, and I totally understand. That's something that people tend to get worried about really quickly. And that's fine. That we can talk out, we can figure out. But it's also a question of the sheer amount of road space that's devoted to cars. The roads around there, be them Grand, Godfrey, or Kensington, are extraordinarily wide. You can fit 3 cars abreast just in the driving lanes. So that's more space than we need for driving in a neighborhood like this. And that's not even talking about parking. So it just goes to show, right? There are different ways of looking at this, different potential solutions. And that's why I'm encouraging people to get involved in the consultation, because you'll probably be able to explore solutions that none of us would have imagined. And that's where good things can happen. So thanks for the question, and I hope to see you there.
Thank you. Number 9 is about consultations. As the year draws, it's from Julia Grunberg. As the year draws to an end, I'm reflecting on the state of municipal politics in our borough. Between the YMCA, Terrebonne, and Godfrey, there have been many projects that have sadly caused residents to be upset and resulted in conflict. We must find a way to consult citizens properly before major projects go into motion, especially since our taxpayer dollars are paying for all of this. This extraordinary borough council meeting is also going to cost us money. Will all councillors make a New Year's resolution to better consult citizens next year, as opposed to making surprise announcements and calling meetings on short notice? Thank you for this question. I'm all about communicating better with the citizens, and I'm always looking for better ways to do so. So for sure we can improve that. Thank you for that suggestion. And if you have any suggestions of how we can reach citizens better other than social media and email, please let me know. Number 10, oh, that's Godfrey. Number 11, that's also
Ça va à la
Godfrey.
question 15, Madame Montgomery.
Numéro 15, okay.
Oui.
Joanne Wemmers. Residents in Vendôme Village have repeatedly asked our elected representatives as well as local civil servants for information regarding rules concerning noise, volume, and vibrations caused by construction. Our questions have been dodged and left unanswered. What are the rules regarding the maximum volume of noise, decibels, and vibrations caused by construction? What is the borough doing to monitor noise and vibrations at the aforementioned site? what requirements, if any, has the borough imposed on the builder to ensure that the law is respected and that the century-old homes in the area are not compromised? Thank you, Ms. Wemmers, for your question. There certainly has been a lot of noise in the neighborhood. And I believe the company has been warned that it may face fines if it doesn't respect the noise volumes. What I'm going to suggest is that in the new year, you sit down with our Director of Urban Planning, Lucie Bédard, and talk about these issues that you're having in detail with her. Unfortunately, she's not here today. It's right before Christmas, so a lot of people are already on vacation, but I will see that the two of you get together in the new year. Thank you. Alors, 16. Non, ça c'est Godfrey aussi. Le prochain...
Le prochain, ça irait à 18.
18? Okay.
Numéro 18.
Neil Mukherjee. We are in the middle of a pandemic. We are 3 days before Christmas. We have neighbors who remember being inconvenienced during a pandemic by temporarily losing residential parking spots. People are stressed right now. The timing as well as the circumstance below tender threshold, pre-picked consultant. Je crois que ça c'est Godfrey aussi.
C'est Godfrey aussi.
Oui, oui.
19.
Excuse-moi.
19 aussi, je crois que c'est référence à Godfrey aussi pour le numéro 19. Mais on parle d'un projet de comité de mobilité, alors c'est peut-être un peu différent.
Le 20, je crois, budget. Numéro 20. Okay. Alexander Montagano, can you please tell...
M'excuse, point d'ordre. J'ai lu le mot Godfrey paraître, mais ça n'a rien à faire avec Godfrey. C'est concernant une proposition comité mobilité.
Exact. Est-ce que vous voulez que je la lise à numéro 19 de
Mme
d'accord. Donc, concernant l'éthique et la gouvernance, c'est pour M. Rotran. M. Rotran, croyez-vous que la formation d'un comité de mobilité ou de circulation, comme dans l'arrondissement Mercier-Hochelaga-Maisonneuve, pourrait être une solution afin de ramener la confiance des citoyens concernant toutes les questions sur la circulation et le stationnement des véhicules sur les terrains et chemins publics, la circulation des piétons et des cyclistes, la circulation routière et le marquage de la chaussée en lieu et place des décisions non réfléchies comme le projet sur rue Godfrey et la saga des pistes cyclables sur la rue Terrebonne à l'été 2020.
Monsieur Rotran.
Bonjour, Madame Cormier. Merci pour votre question. La réponse courte est oui, je suis d'accord avec l'idée de faire mieux ce qu'on fait. Je vais consulter mes pairs et avec l'idée de revenir au conseil avec une motion qui pourrait créer un tel comité. Quand Warren Allman était élu en 2005, il est président d'un comité des résidents qui a touché les problèmes de circulation et ils ont proposé que peut-être on va bénéficier d'un plan de déplacement. Ce n'était jamais arrivé dans l'arrondissement, mais je pense que ça va être bon de faire ça pour éviter les types de conflits que nous avons vécus. Vous avez raison, Terrebonne a complètement divisé le quartier et nous avons finalement retiré les pistes cyclables sur Terrebonne pour créer un comité pour discuter la mobilité sur ces rues et ailleurs. Je pense que ça va être dans l'intérêt public de faire ça mieux, donc je m'engage de revenir dans les prochains 60 jours avec une proposition. Merci.
Merci. Monsieur Arsenault, oui.
Merci beaucoup. Étant donné que c'est une résidente du district de Loyola.
Monsieur Arsenault, excuse-moi, je crois que Monsieur McQueen a levé sa main.
Comme vous voulez.
OK, c'est pas la fin du monde. C'est pas la fin du monde. Je crois qu'elle était résidente de mon quartier, de mon district, mais j'ai peut-être tort. OK. Merci beaucoup pour votre question, Mme Cormier. Alors, comme vous savez, parce que vous participez, on travaille dur avec le comité mobilité de la rue Terrebonne. Et moi, je crois qu'on fait certains progrès, lents, mais sûrs. Et je pense que le niveau de discussion là, certainement, est certainement productif. Et aussi, je pense que dans ce comité, comme à votre insistance, et c'est complètement acceptable, on regarde un peu la mobilité complète à Notre-Dame-de-Grâce. Pas à Côte-des-Neiges, mais Est-Ouest à Notre-Dame-de-Grâce. On a discuté beaucoup. Alors, je suis d'accord avec la prémisse de votre question, mais je pense qu'on fait déjà des gros progrès avec le comité de mobilité Terrebonne. Merci.
Merci. Monsieur Osno, voulez-vous...
Oui, très rapidement.
ajouter?
Merci, Mme la mairesse. Juste pour souligner que, et je dois vraiment insister là-dessus, de dire que Terrebonne n'a pas été réfléchi, on comprend que c'était dans un contexte où on voulait agir rapidement, puis on a appris notre leçon là-dessus. Mais de dire que Godfrey n'a pas été réfléchi et le mettre dans la même catégorie de Terrebonne, je pense que c'est une qualification qui est injuste, justement parce que on propose un concept. D'abord, on consulte en amont minimum 3 fois avant l'été prochain, puis on implique les gens dans un processus participatif, consultatif et co-créatif. Alors, 2 catégories vraiment.
Merci. Merci. Alors, numéro 20, Alexander Montagano, can you please tell how much public money each person on this council receives each year and for this mandate for discretionary spending as recently reported in the Suburban? Can you please tell me how much public money each person on this council each year and for this mandate for research? Okay, so how much we get each mandate for research. So thank you for this question. This is public information, Mr. Montagano, and every year in our borough, the councillors get $10,000 discretionary and I get $15,000, and that money goes to groups that are registered with our borough, nonprofits who need, $1,000 or a little bit of money to help them with various activities. And in terms of the research, city councillors get $20,000 a year, and borough councillors get $10,000. So, like I said, it's all public money it's public money, yes, but it's also public information. Mr. Perez, did you want to add something?
No, it's fine. You covered it all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Rotan?
Yes, I want to let Mr. Montagano know that the discretionary funding is voted publicly, published in the agenda, and noted in the minutes so that any citizen in the borough can see where it's going, who's getting it, and what purpose it's for. It's very transparent.
Thank you, Mr. Rotan. The next was Godfrey. Okay, number 22, Lucas Fuina. When are the outdoor hockey rink facilities going to be set up? Legault promised outdoor activities for the lockdown, and these rinks are a huge part of allowing citizens to stay active during the lockdown. I know that some of the rinks are ready, but maybe Monsieur Plante, est-ce que vous pouvez donner mise à jour?
Oui.
S'il vous plaît.
Oui. Alors, écoutez, au niveau des patinoires, on a commencé à arroser, nous, les patinoires la semaine dernière. La patinoire bleu-blanc-rouge, elle est ouverte depuis le début de la semaine passée. Si je reviens aux patinoires naturelles, on a commencé à les arroser la semaine dernière, en sachant très bien que même s'il faisait froid, des temps doux s'en venaient, première des choses. Deuxièmement, c'est pas parce qu'il fait froid à l'extérieur que le sol est suffisamment gelé pour que l'eau ne traverse pas le sol. Et c'est souvent ce qui arrive en début d'année si on n'a pas une bonne couche de neige. Alors, malheureusement, on a arrosé. On savait que les résultats étaient pour être plus ou moins bons. On se doutait de ce qui était pour arriver. D'autant plus qu'on voyait venir le redoux là, qui s'en vient dans les prochains jours. Et on a vérifié avec nos collègues dans les autres arrondissements et effectivement, il y a très, très peu d'endroits il y en a peut-être qu'on n'a pas vu, là, mais en grande majorité, on est tous dans la même situation. On est très conscients cette année de l'importance d'aménager les patinoires, et non seulement les patinoires, mais les parcs également, pour que les gens puissent faire un peu d'activité à l'extérieur. Et je peux vous assurer qu'on va faire tout nos possibles, puis nos équipes aussi sont sensibles à ça. Malheureusement, il faut que la météo collabore, et je vous dirais que jusqu'à après Noël, pour l'instant, jusqu'au 26 peut-être, ce ne sera pas le cas. Mais dès que les conditions vont être là, nos équipes vont être sur le terrain.
Merci beaucoup. Mr. McQueen, did you have something you want to add? Or?
Non, merci beaucoup pour cette réponse, M. Plante. Et je comprends qu'est-ce que vous disiez. Il y a des problèmes techniques, c'est pas facile. Moi, je vais poser la question plus tard. Est-ce que c'est possible de mettre, je ne sais pas, un plastique en dessous, quelque chose comme ça pour vous préparer? C'est la question. Mais je suis d'accord, on regarde toute la météo et c'est très difficile de dire qu'est-ce qui vient après.
Merci. Number 25 is from Sharon Sweeney. I would like to ask if you would consider a similar project that you are proposing for Godfrey to the small park Herbert Uter Bridge. It is an underutilized park that has not been taken care of in many years. The bricks to the southwest corner are all broken. Most picnic benches and benches are broken. Residents of Benny, West Hill, Godfrey, and Madison are very interested in improvements to this small park. So thank you very much, Ms. Sweeney. It's a very good suggestion, and you know, many of our parks need TLC, so we would certainly look at this one in the new year. Je crois que ça c'est tout. Alors on retourne.
On retourne à ce moment-là aux questions sur Godfrey. La quatrième était la numéro 7, donc de Fiona Myers.
Quatrième?
La numéro 7.
Oh, 7, excuse-moi. Fiona Myers. Why aren't citizens being consulted on the Godfrey project? The timing of this vote, a couple of days before Christmas, and the current disgraceful state of Benny Park leaves me not trusting that the citizens' best interest is being considered. So once again, I'll ask Mr. Arsenault to take this.
Yes, thank you for the question, Mrs. Myers. Again, as I've said many times over the past few weeks and today, this file that we're approving is precisely to consult residents multiple times before anything is done. This is precisely the kind of consultation that we should be doing more often. And when we've been criticized in the past for not consulting the right way or at the right time, it's because we've done it after the fact. Or, you know, we've not gone about it the right way. This is not one of those times. We're starting with a consultation. Consultations cost a little bit of money, nothing compared to doing a project first and then consulting later. So you'll be invited to participate, and I really hope to see you there. The more people that join in on this and give their feedback, the better it is. And as both the mayor and myself have said, if the overwhelming response from the community is, you know what, this money could be spent better elsewhere, then we're ready to accept that. That's okay. That's a legitimate result. But we should engage in the exercise. Thank you.
Mr. Arsenault, I would just ask you not to speak for me, please. I can speak for myself. Thank you.
So retracted. My apologies.
Maintenant, number 8. So, hi, I'm glad to see that council is working to make this area more pedestrian friendly, but there are already problems in this area that the plan seems to ignore. There are many conflicts all along Grand Boulevard between de Maisonneuve and Montcalm because of confusing and poorly designed bike lane. Does the council have a plan to address this problem? If so, what is the plan? Has the council done a needs assessment for this area to truly get a sense of the problems that need to be addressed? Again, I'm going to pass this question to Mr. Arsenault since he has the information on the file.
Well, Madam Mayor, if you don't mind me saying so, I think this is a question that goes beyond just Godfrey. It mentions the challenges with the Grand Avenue bike path. So I've answered every question on Godfrey. I'm going to leave this one to you. Okay.
Well, I agree.
Can you mention the name of the citizen because it was not mentioned?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Jason Magder. Yes, I agree that there are problems with the bike lane on Grand Boulevard. I wish, you know, I think it should be protected bike lane. I've ridden on that before, and I can see how there's issues with people opening their car doors outside of the daycares and so on. So that is something we're going to have to look at in the future to improve it. So with that, on that note, that's the end of our question period. Thank you very much, everyone. Merci beaucoup pour vos questions. Je suis très contente que beaucoup de nos citoyens envoient des questions. Alors, on passe maintenant à 10.05, question du conseil. Est-ce que des conseillers ont des questions?
Oui, alors, oui, je vais continuer avec la question pour nos services concernant les patinoires extérieurs. Alors, écoutez, je cherche des solutions techniques. Je comprends que c'est très difficile. J'ai posé des questions à d'autres gens aussi qui font des patinoires sur le gazon et d'autres gens ont dit la même chose concernant que l'eau s'échappe ou va dans le sol. Alors, je sais pas, c'est juste chercher des solutions. Alors, deux éléments de solutions possibles. Est-ce que c'est possible de mettre un plastique, quelque chose, une bâche, tarp, je crois, en anglais, sous pour que l'eau ne s'écoule pas? Ça, c'est une chose. Et deux, augmenter la fréquence de l'arrosage quand c'est une période où il n'y a pas une tempête. Je comprends que si une grosse tempête, un verglas, on doit mettre nos équipes sur ça. J'ai aucun problème avec ça. Mais une semaine, comme vous savez, la semaine dernière où il n'y avait pas de tempête, est-ce qu'on fait quelque chose de quand même assez, c'est quoi le mot, intensive pour essayer d'avoir les patinoires pour un week-end comme ça?
Oui, deux choses. Tout d'abord, écoutez, les questions de bâche et tout ça, ça pourrait être regardé. Je comprends que, bon, cet hiver, on voit que c'est une tendance beaucoup chez les citoyens qui font des patinoires chez eux, là, qui décident de mettre ce type d'installation pour avoir à grande échelle, peut-être pour les années prochaines. Maintenant, en ce qui est trait à la fréquence des arrosages, je vous dirais que nos équipes sont quand même des gens qui ont l'expérience nécessaire, hein, qui font ça chaque année, qui savent à quelle fréquence ils doivent arroser. Il ne faut pas oublier qu'il y a aussi un enjeu, je vous dirais, qui est un enjeu écologique dans tout ça. C'est-à-dire que lorsqu'on sait qu'on va avoir des forts redoux, ben, de venir arroser et de je m'excuse, mais de gaspiller des milliers de litres d'eau, alors qu'on sait très bien que cette eau-là va fondre dans les prochains jours, ben, il y a aussi des enjeux qui s'adressent à ce niveau-là. Alors, je vous dirais qu'en ce qui a trait à la fréquence et à la qualité du travail de nos gens, moi, je suis très confiant que ce qui est fait actuellement est approprié. Parfois, ça peut donner l'impression qu'on ne le fait pas aussi fréquemment, mais c'est parce qu'on sait ce qui s'en vient aussi. Mais, et je vous répète, je vous assure que quand l'hiver va être pris comme faux, parce que vous savez que ça arrive à un moment donné, hein, on sait que, bon, là, on est correct. C'est sûr que nos équipes vont être là et on le souhaite tout autant que vous autres et c'est probablement une des activités que nos cols bleus apprécient beaucoup, hein, parce que c'est très gratifiant de voir par la suite là, les gens utiliser les patinoires. Alors, on comprend très bien votre intérêt à vous et à l'ensemble du conseil pour les patinoires au cours des prochaines semaines.
Alors, ces commentaires sont complètement raisonnables et je vais les prendre en compte dans le futur. Petite question technique. Est-ce que les patinoires sont arrosés avec un camion ou avec un hose qui sort des chalets?
C'est une combinaison des deux. À ce que je sache, c'est une combinaison des deux. Je pense qu'il y a des endroits où on a accès au chalet, mais plusieurs endroits, on doit également y aller avec un camion là, parce que c'est plus facile et plus efficace.
Parfait, merci.
Merci. Alors, j'ai une question pour M. Plante aussi. J'aimerais savoir quand est-ce que les services ont commencé à travailler le projet Godfrey?
Le projet Godfrey a commencé à être travaillé, écoutez, c'était probablement au début de l'année. Je pourrais vérifier, mais au niveau du bureau technique, il y avait à ce moment-là deux endroits. La volonté, en fait, c'est que suite au projet de la rue Jean-Briand, on voulait voir où est-ce que le projet où on pourrait répéter, si vous voulez, un projet similaire. Cette fois-ci dans Notre-Dame-de-Grâce. On a regardé, il y avait deux endroits principalement et Godfrey a été choisi, entre autres parce que Godfrey, de ce que je comprends là, des arguments du bureau technique, c'est sûr que c'est un endroit évidemment qui n'a pas été choisi pour régler des problèmes de sécurité d'enjeux piétonniers. On ne peut pas prétendre que dans le secteur de la rue Godfrey, il y a énormément de piétons, mais surtout pour redonner plus de place à la végétalisation, entre autres, là, au parc Le-Duc, hein, qui est pas vraiment un parc, qui est comme trop petit pour être un parc, mais trop grand pour être une place. Alors, on se disait, est-ce que nous pouvons, dans ce secteur-là, et quand je vous dis on, c'est ce que les gens de notre bureau technique auquel ils réfléchissaient, là, se sont dit, est-ce qu'on peut améliorer la situation dans le secteur? Alors, essentiellement, la réflexion vient de là.
Et qui a mandaté que les services travaillent sur ce projet?
En fait, c'est qu'il y a des programmes qui viennent de la Ville-Centre, comme le programme, comme le PAPP sur Jean-Briand, par exemple, il y a quelques années. Alors, lorsque les programmes sortent, ben, les services, à ce moment-là, cherchent des projets, justement, et ils ont identifié celui de la rue Godfrey, tout simplement.
Et quand est-ce que vous avez informé le conseil que vous travaillez là-dessus ou que les services travaillent sur ce projet?
Écoutez, ça fait quelques mois. Il faut comprendre que le bureau technique a travaillé sur le projet. Bon, à un moment donné, tout ça a été mis de côté parce qu'il y a eu la pandémie, il y a eu toute la question des installations. On a pensé que on n'a qu'à penser à ce qui s'est passé sur la rue Terrebonne. Et à un moment donné, puis là, écoutez, il faudrait que je retourne dans mes notes, là, mais je pense que c'était à l'automne. On nous a dit, tu vois, le projet de la rue Godfrey a été accepté.
Je pense que c'était en novembre.
Tu vois, oui, je vous dis à l'automne. Alors,
mais est-ce que vous avez le nom de la personne qui a mandaté les services de travailler là-dessus?
En fait, non, c'est pas, comme je vous ai expliqué, vous savez, parfois, il y a des programmes qui viennent de la Ville-Centre. Nos services voient les programmes passer. On l'avait déjà fait dans le cas de Jean-Briand. Alors, ils ont décidé de travailler sur celui de Godfrey. En étant bien conscient qu'on n'est pas dans la même dynamique et que les impacts ne sont pas les mêmes. Mais l'approche qui a été prônée par le bureau technique dans le dossier de la rue Godfrey, c'est justement de travailler à partir du parc. Et non pas de changer l'ensemble de l'environnement, mais de travailler à partir du parc et de voir comment est-ce que ce parc-là ou cette place-là pouvait peut-être être mieux utilisé ou peut-être éventuellement empiéter quelque peu sur les rues qui entourent le parc et peut-être qu'il y a de la place pour faire des aménagements. Et c'est ça que j'utilise le peut-être parce que justement, on est dans un exercice de consultation comme on l'a d'ailleurs fait sur la rue Jean-Briand.
Et savez-vous quelles études ont été faites ou est-ce qu'il y avait des études autour de Godfrey?
Non, il n'y a pas d'études. C'est exactement le but de l'opération. Et là, vous comprenez que je ne veux pas entrer dans le débat politique, là, évidemment, je suis prudent dans ce que je dis, mais c'est exactement le but de l'opération du contrat dont vous discuterez dans quelques instants. C'est-à-dire, nous, on identifie un secteur, on dit, regardez, il pourrait avoir quelque chose d'intéressant là. On le présente à nos homologues de la Ville-Centre. Eux nous disent, ouais, ça peut être intéressant, regardons ça. On est prêt à embarquer avec vous. Donnons un premier mandat pour consulter la population. On part avec un projet de base, évidemment, parce que ça prend quelque chose sur lequel réfléchir. Mais à partir de là, on travaille avec les citoyens. On arrive à quelque chose d'intéressant, on l'espère. Et on apporte les modifications. Ou encore, si ça ne fonctionne pas, ben, on met fin tout simplement après les consultations. On se dit, OK, c'est correct, le projet n'était pas souhaitable dans ce secteur-là. C'est un programme qui s'appelle le programme des rues partagées, piétonnes et partagées, qui vient de la Ville-Centre. C'est une façon de fonctionner qui a été bonne pour nous, pour Jean-Briand, qui a été bonne aussi dans plusieurs dossiers auparavant dans d'autres arrondissements de Montréal. Et voilà, et c'est tout simplement sur cette base-là qu'on l'a présenté.
OK. Et dernière question, vous avez dit qu'il y a 2 endroits qui étaient considérés. C'est quoi
l'autre endroit? C'est sur la rue Harley, dans le coin du centre West Haven. Et j'ai pas les considérations pour lesquelles là, ça a été rejeté, là, qu'on a préféré Godfrey. Si je me souviens bien, et je dis ça là, sous toute réserve, mais c'était plus des enjeux évidemment, il y a plus de circulation dans ce coin-là. On est moins dans un coin qui est bien structuré et on pense que ça va prendre des interventions plus importantes dans le coin de Harley, là, dans ce secteur-là. Alors, c'est dans ce sens-là que Godfrey avait été choisi par les services.
OK. Merci beaucoup. D'autres questions des conseillers?
Oui, j'ai une autre question, s'il vous plaît. Désolé, M. Plante, encore une fois, la première partie de cette question va être pour vous. Après, il va y avoir une question pour la mairesse. Ça sera peut-être pour Madame, notre chef de comptabilité, mais je vois qu'elle n'est pas.
Madame Gaudreau, oui.
Madame Gaudreau, excusez-moi, comment pourrais-je oublier ce nom tellement important pour notre arrondissement? Mais ma question, c'est frais de parc. Je comprends que chaque développement dans tout notre arrondissement paye des frais de parc qui sont supposés être dépensés pour l'amélioration, etc., des parcs. Alors, il y a eu quand même des développements NDG ou proches d'NDG, le nouveau IGA sur Côte-Saint-Luc, il y a des nouveaux développements qui s'en viennent sur de Maisonneuve, tous vont payer des frais de parc. Alors, combien d'argent y a-t-il dans un fonds de frais de parc en ce moment, ou est-ce que c'est comme ça que ça fonctionne?
Oui, ce n'est pas nécessairement tous les développements, là, mais les développements qui font l'objet de lotissements, entre autres, doivent payer ce qu'on appelle des frais de parc. Écoutez, vous me prenez là, un peu au dépourvu à savoir combien Et le problème, écoutez, on est peut-être aux alentours de 1,5 million, 2 millions. Le problème que j'ai, c'est que ça varie tout le temps. Parce que, évidemment, il y a des nouvelles entrées d'argent et il y a des sorties d'argent. Parce que ce qu'on fait, nous, c'est que ce qui est important de comprendre, c'est qu'on n'assigne pas les frais de parc d'un projet nécessairement à ce projet-là. Parce qu'on ne peut pas, parce que parfois, bon, ça serait des trop petites sommes ou des fois des trop grosses sommes. Donc, l'argent qui est reçu pour les frais de parc dans le cadre d'un projet en particulier s'en va dans le fonds de parc. Et nous, lorsque nous avons des projets, par exemple, de rénovation d'un parc, peu importe lequel, ou d'agrandissement ou d'un nouveau parc, ben, on va puiser dans ce fonds-là. Alors, c'est important de faire cette précision-là pour pas que les gens croient que, par exemple, s'il y a un projet à côté de chez eux qui se construit et qu'il y a une contribution au fonds de parc, que directement l'argent va aller dans des installations en proximité. Malheureusement, ce n'est pas le cas, mais ce qui ne veut pas dire qu'il n'y en aura pas, mais le lien direct n'est pas établi.
Parfait, je comprends et merci pour ces chiffres approximatifs. Je comprends que ça varie tout le temps. So now my question is for Mayor Montgomery. So Marvin Rocha, I believe at City Council, I forget where, was kind of saying that the YMCA park, it's at best 5 years in the future. I hope to disagree with that perspective. And as we've just heard, there is some funds, at least perhaps $1 million, perhaps a bit more, in the Frais de Parc Fund, as it's called. And I was wondering if you could commit to immediate progress on a YMCA park steadily. So it's not to get it all done at once, not at all, because we want the community consulted and we want creative, interesting things. But say a first step right away in 2021, because I've heard several people mention it, is take down the fences. That would be a first step, and then maybe in the year after, in 2022, and that of course is dependent on who of us is going to be here, a first children's park, maybe for the little kids or the bigger kids, but not necessarily both, so that we can do it really well for one group, do something interesting. Would you be willing to commit to some kind of timeline along those lines?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's not all the time that we're given that we were able to buy green space, so I'm absolutely anxious to get it going and get people using the space.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Gautran.
Thank you. First of all, I need to correct something Peter McQueen said. The services have told us there's absolutely no money for the land that we bought next to the Y. It might be 2-3 years or longer. And in terms of the $500,000 in the park fund, it doesn't all belong to Peter McQueen's district. It belongs to all the parks in the neighborhood and has to be shared out, Peter, all right? So we'll find a solution for that, and I won't even slam you today for having voted against our amendment. My question is to Mr. Plante. Mr. Plante, vous avez bien expliqué le problème de l'autobus scolaire dans le triangle, dans le secteur Mountain Sites. Effectivement, le problème pour nous, c'est le centre des services scolaires de Montréal. Il n'y a pas assez des autobus pour respecter l'entente qu'ils ont avec nous. J'ai contacté M. Arcand, il doit faire pression au niveau provincial, c'est pas nous qui va le soutenir. Mais j'aimerais savoir si l'entente est renouvelée automatiquement ou se prend un nouveau vote de conseil d'arrondissement pour l'année scolaire 2021-2022. Déjà, les gens là-bas disent, bon, il était très dur cette année scolaire. Il veut avoir au moins le confort de savoir que tout va être réglé bien avant l'année prochaine. Pouvez-vous mettre ça en contexte pour nous?
Oui, mais écoutez, je n'ai pas l'information. Je sais qu'on l'a renouvelé pour la saison 2021, je vous dirais. Il me semble que ce n'était que pour un an. Je vais devoir vérifier, M. Ratran, et vous revenir. Je n'ai pas, malheureusement, je n'ai pas cette information-là sous la main.
Okay. Merci. À mémoire, je pense que c'est 3 ans qui terminent après l'année scolaire 2021, c'est-à-dire ça va probablement prendre une approche aux missions scolaires pour 2021 après. Donc, je vous invite à commencer d'ouvrir le dossier et de nous revenir en temps et lieu. Merci, M. Plante.
C'est bien.
Merci beaucoup. On passe maintenant à notre dossier de jour.
Madame Montgomery,
oh, excusez-moi.
Il y avait le petit point 10.06 qu'on a ajouté. Oui.
Exactement.
Le point correspondant.
Merci. 10.06, correspondance.
Parfait.
Oui.
Donc, je dépose une lettre datée du 21 décembre 2020 de Mme Yasmine Gandour, fondatrice et directrice générale du centre préscolaire Orchard House concernant le parc Le Duc sur l'avenue Godfrey.
Merci beaucoup. Maintenant, on passe à notre dossier 20.01.
Oui, donc c'est accordé à la coopérative à but non lucratif Castor et Pollux un contrat de service professionnel au montant de 99 995,48 afin d'accompagner l'arrondissement dans la démarche de participation citoyenne, de conception et de mise en œuvre dans le cadre du projet de PIRPP de l'avenue Godfrey et autoriser une dépense à cette fin de 105 699,99. C'est une demande de prix en vertu du règlement de gestion contractuelle et donc il est aussi question d'approuver le projet de convention. Pardon.
Je propose.
Et j'appuie.
Est-ce qu'il y a un commentaire de quelqu'un? Monsieur Gautran? Vous avez levé la main? Oui.
Oui.
Okay.
Merci. Bon, sauf si le proposeur veut aller avant moi, parce que je vais parler contre le projet. S'il ne veut pas, je vais continuer. First of all, why are we here today? There's a lot of legitimate questions about the urgency of this dossier and calling everybody together a couple of days before Christmas. That shouldn't really have happened. You acceded to this request for the meeting, Ms. Montgomery. You didn't have to. The request was made, as far as I understand, by one councillor alone, Mr. Arsenault. It's not as if this follows the rules where if 3 councillors demand a special council, it needs to be accorded. So in other words, you decided to call this meeting, and I think that was a mistake. And I don't buy what Mr. Arsenault has been saying in question period as justifying this meeting. I'd like everyone to take note of the letter that we received from Orchard House. The Director General of Orchard House called me yesterday and said, hey, we were never consulted. We didn't even know about this project. It's not true that the daycares in the sector are on board and want this project for Godfrey Avenue to go ahead. They told me 140 children and that they already have a lot of problems. Sorry.
Monsieur Plante, pouvez-vous fermer votre micro, s'il vous plaît?
They have 140 kids and they already have a lot of...
Ça m'éclaire, toi, hein? Ça se peut-tu?
Non.
Okay.
Monsieur Plante,
Ça peut.
votre micro est ouvert, s'il vous plaît.
Pardon.
Merci. Okay, go ahead, Mr.
Problem with their parents finding places to park. And on this, they have written to us, and they asked a question today as well. And the Director General of Orchard House also told us that several of the other daycares in the area were not consulted are having the same type of questions. That alone should be a red flag. I have been hearing from an awful lot of NDG residents recently, and they can think of a ton of other priorities that should go ahead first. Interesting to hear my colleague Peter McQueen acknowledge finally that spending $11 million to buy the land from the Y doesn't make it usable, and that we have to have other investments to turn that into a public park and possibly add some housing there as well, because that has been discussed. There's no money right now for the foreseeable future for that space. And I really think as a council, we need to pressure Center City to come through. They underfund this borough. It's been very marked over the last 2 or 3 years with the current administration. Former administrations reacted to our request by finding special funding for projects and for special revitalization of entire areas of our borough. I can think of what happened on De La Savannah in my district, in which the Coderre administration gave $12 million. The reconfiguration of Van Horn between DeCarry and Victoria, that was never in our budget. We got $12 million out of that. And we should be asking for funding. But however, within our own funding, there's $200,000 here in the Godfrey project that is proposed to be spent, even if nothing else ever goes ahead. I can think not only of the Y, there's also the Herbert Outerbridge Park, which many residents speak about. There has been a couple of people who have reached out to me about the terrible condition of Terrebonne Street, west of Madison, and saying, why isn't that being repaved? And it should have been repaved years ago, and they're absolutely correct. So why are we embarking in a $905,000 adventure that nobody ever asked for? You'll recall in November, when we had the first discussion about this at the Borough Council, and there was a file about this, I was the only one to vote against, because I suggested it wasn't the role of the Borough Council to decide unilaterally how to tell people how to live their lives, improve their neighborhoods, and then say, we're going to consult you after the fact or while we're beginning the process. People don't want us to spend this money to consult them. They wanted to be consulted before we go to phase 2, which is giving out this contract or not. If you read the file from November, it becomes crystal clear that actually started last year. The document calling for streets to be inscribed into this project is dated February the 20th. How do I know that? It's in the public file on item 30.02 of our November council meeting. And it quite clearly said that we had to get our demand in by April the 15th, and that the streets to be accepted would be chosen by June. So since June, the borough has known about this project. The first the public heard about it is November 2nd. And at that point, I already said, we cannot go ahead with this unless we consult residents. Consulting residents does not mean spending the money for this project. It means sending them a letter, putting something on our website saying, we're thinking of doing something. Let's get some preliminary feedback. Should we go to step number 2? On December 7th, it was proposed to vote a contract to the firm Castor and Pollux, $99,995.46. That's less than $5 less than what would have required for public tender. It was an invitation to several firms to submit a project. This firm was chosen. It is not the cheapest project, but chosen for its expertise in shared streets. This firm is not chosen because it's an expert in public consultation. It's an expert on shared street projects. Today we had 27 questions. Almost every one of them was on Godfrey. Almost every one of them was negative and saying, why are you doing this? We've never asked for it. This is a quiet, almost bucolic street. Why are you wanting to change the configuration here and cause all sorts of problems? I've reread all the files on Godfrey, and it does say there are certain weaknesses in the project, including the fact that there's not a lot of people who would use this as a shared pedestrian street if that actually went ahead. The $905,000 is mostly to come from Center City in future years. My conjecture is if the administration of the city changes in November, this is likely to be one of those first projects that would be removed and not be considered a priority. The city is in dire financial shape. The next administration is going to have to belt tighten, at least for the first 2 years of its administration, to return us to better financial times. Viewers of this Borough Council may be surprised to learn that our debt to revenue ratio now is 120%. If it goes up to 121%, the city risks losing its credit rating. It's pretty shocking. So undoubtedly, certain projects are going to be rethought, and this would be almost number one on the list. So NDG residents are asking, why are you pushing this project? And why are you spending like $100,000 on a consultation that we see more as cajoling us or trying to minimally advance some of the ideas of shared streets when we don't want that? People are saying, not only the daycare residents, we don't want to lose 33 parking spots, which is what it says in the November document. But if you read the November document, it goes beyond 33 parking spots, says you probably could lose a few more here and there and increase this. This is not a project the neighborhood wants. This is not a project that the neighborhood asked for. You don't hire people to get people's opinion on a project that they don't want, with the hope that you can create a minimal consensus to at least push some of your political agenda. This is ideological. And of all the priorities in Loyola and NDG district, this should be far, far lower. I've told Peter McQueen, I'll work with him on seeing how we can get funding for the park next to the Y. That could serve thousands of people. That will be a public park. It'll be open and easily accessible to the community. The Godfrey dossier is a scandalous use of public funds for very little public benefit. And again, it's being imposed. I found the question that was asked by Ms. Cormier about a mobility committee, which I took to mean more than just mobility, I think reflects what people are increasingly seeing, a lack of consultation. And by the way, I'll conclude with this. This project must have been known to your office, Ms. Montgomery. Now, I heard what you said last time. You said you didn't know about it, but it wouldn't have advanced unless, could it be, and I'm just throwing this out there, that somebody in your office might have worked on this and suggested this. The idea of closing streets, I've been approached by your former staff that tried to close streets in my neighborhood. I pushed back saying, hey, residents didn't want that and weren't asking for that. And I anticipated all sorts of problems, some of which, by the way, are in the sommaire about this particular project, which the services say have some benefits, but have some negative aspects as well. So I would ask if you can find any documentation among your former staff's work to see if they were the ones that initiated this particular project. So I'm going to vote against this today, and I would advise the members of the Borough Council that this will hopelessly divide the neighborhood, that the institutions have already told us they don't want this, the residents don't want this. I think we need to reflect very better on what we can use, the 200,000 that we've already budgeted in November, 105,000 which was supposed to be spent today, and that we should better define our priorities, not only for the whole borough, but for NDG as well. I believe Mr. McQueen would probably think of a long list of things that could be better done. By the way, I ended by telling Mr. McQueen that I've been contacted by some of his residents. I understand this is right at the border of your district and Mr. Arsenault's, and that the Godfrey side is in Mr. Arsenault's district, but Grand Boulevard's in your district. And I've heard from a ton of people on Grand Boulevard, and they're not happy about this project. And I urged you to vote against, and I would ask you to give them consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Votron. I will just respond to your question about when I was informed. I was informed November at caucus, the same time as the rest of you. And as the mayor, as you know, I'm the person that gives the mandates to the services about these projects. I did not give this mandate. And it's, you know, I should have been informed by the borough director, Mr. Clant, about this when it was starting, and I was not. And in my books, that is unacceptable.
Ms. Montgomery, thank you for that clarification. If you just, however, you could have prevented the dossier from being on the borough agenda on November the 7th, since it's you that orders the order du jour. And if you're telling me that you didn't know about it, you had qualms about it, why was it in front of us in November?
So that we could, Mr. Arsenault?
Point of order, Madam Mayor. I don't think that's a fair characterization. I understand that things have been tense, to say the least, in our borough over the past year. But you and I and everyone else on this council knows that not everything that your cabinet does passes over your desk first. back when we were all in the same party and we had staff that worked with all of us on these files, there were often many things that staff would do that were not brought to your direct attention for every single step of the process. In fact, it's why you have a staff. So I would, I understand that things have been tense. I understand that you don't see eye to eye for a lot of things with our borough director. But to say that it's unacceptable just because you did not see every step of the process, I think is unfair, because as you and I both know, you had, at least until January, you had a very talented young woman who was working the urban planning files with various departments. So I would urge calm, I would urge reasonableness, and not presenting a way of working to the public that is not, in fact, the way things work at the borough.
My staff works very well. Thank you very much. And we all work very well together. So I will go right now to Mr. McQueen.
Thank you, Madame la Maire. First of all, just a little comment for Mr. Rocha. I mean, the Center City has already participated massively in the YMCA deal by buying the land for $10 million, which does not mean that I wouldn't welcome more money from Center City on setting up the park. And certainly, obviously, if there is social housing on the site, that will also be money from Center City. Maintenant, pour le Godfrey. Premièrement, je veux juste dire que je salue le travail de mon collègue conseiller Arsenault et de nos services et de le staff politique qui ont travaillé sur ce dossier. Ce n'est jamais une mauvaise idée d'essayer de rêver grand et de penser à des projets, et ils ont travaillé fort. Deuxièmement, je veux aussi dire que j'appuie le programme de rue partagée dans beaucoup de places de la ville, incluant dans le district de conseiller Popiano. C'est clair que le projet sur Jean-Priant est très nécessaire parce qu'il y a beaucoup de piétons. C'est entre une station de métro et un campus universitaire. Il y a beaucoup de piétons à toute heure de la journée et de la semaine. Et c'est la même chose pour ces projets partout en ville. This district of Godfrey, as several have mentioned already, is quite bucolic, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And, it's already fairly safe for pedestrians and cyclists. I myself go by there all the time. So it is a questionable site. I mean, it doesn't mean you can't do something, but it does seem a bit odd sometimes that we're doing something to a site that's already quite safe. As our director also said, Harley Street was not done because there's too much traffic, so potentially dangerous for pedestrians, but then you can't do something. So a little bit of a contradiction there, which I don't have the absolute answer to. I agree. It's a tricky question throughout our city on where we are actually going to do interventions. Now, specifically on the Godfrey project. I mean, it's just outside my district. It does touch, as Councillor Rochon said, some people on Grand who are in my district. It's only one side of Grand is my district, so fair enough. I got those complaints. I mean, I guess I gave Councillor Arsenault the benefit of the doubt, even though I was skeptical from the start, as the comments I just said indicate. But I gave him the benefit of the doubt to give it a go. And one important reason is because I think long and hard before I put down a project that's in another councillor's district and refuse to fund it. Obviously, when projects come up in my district, I hope that other councillors are generous enough and fair enough to be willing to fund them, and they have in the past. So I'm not going to be a priori against projects in other people's districts, even if it does, in this case, it just barely touches my district. So I went along with it. Consultations were going to come. Well, the problem is Facebook is actually not a bad tool for consultation. I mean, it's also a place where there may be lots of trolls and lots of negative comments as well. But let's be honest, it's also a place where everybody can speak, all kinds of comments are made, and you get, in the end, quite a good perspective on how many people and what kind of people are for something and who's against. So now, of course, enough consultation has happened. I'm just not seeing the support. I mean, I am not seeing the support. I see a lot of people against for a variety of reasons, and I'm not seeing the support. I am now going to mention one particular site of that opposition, one particular person who represents an organization, Carmen Dalia and the Espace Knox. I want to be clear. I am strongly in favor and grateful to Mrs. Dalia for having bought the Knox Church, for having turned it into a theater space, a daycare in the back. a cultural production in NDG. She spent a lot of money on that. She's put a lot of life's work into that. And she has kept a church in NDG open and not torn down and not semi-demolished. Basically, the outside of the church stands as it always has architecturally. And this is incredibly important. I mean, in my district alone, several churches, Trinity Memorial is threatened. The small church on NDG Avenue, St. Columba, of course, is under consideration for being torn down right at this moment. So I am incredibly grateful to her for having saved that church and opened a cultural space in Middle NDG. Now, Carmen D'Elia is totally happy if more people come to her place and so forth by bicycle, by foot, on the 103 bus on Moncton and from the metro station, get off at Grand and walk down to her production space. Of course, so it's not like Carmen D'Elia is against pedestrians or cyclists, people coming, you know, people mulling in the park before or after her performances. Of course she is, but part of her business model, like it or not, is some parking spots. Let's be honest. In this city right now, you want a middle-class audience to come to your show, you're gonna have some of those people coming by car, maybe 10, 20, 30 people, 30 spots, that's it. The church, I mean, I go to New Hope Senior Center enough to also know that they also, as a place for, they have, obviously some of the people come by car, the volunteers come by car that drive, people who don't have cars, the suppliers of the food need car access and so forth. They're also concerned about car parking, drop-off zones. Of course they are, not Kensington Presbyterian as well. So of course the institutions are very concerned about this. So I have to agree with Councillor Rochon a little bit that this is like a solution looking for a problem. People are happy with the situation there. Mr. Schwartz's questions at the beginning of this council, and I in no way put Clifford up to asking that question. There's no problem. We like Godfrey Street the way it is. It is fairly quiet. I believe the people in the size of the sidewalks in front of both Knox Performance Space and Kensington Presbyterian is pretty large. I never remember leaving one of those an event at one of those places and feeling sort of crowded on the sidewalk and there was too many people and we were spilling onto the street. I mean, if we want to do some traffic calming on Godfrey or Grand, a stop sign on Grand there, that's okay. I think some traffic calming, especially I saw it in a number of comments, people want something better on Kensington. No sidewalk, bit of a downhill. Maybe we need to do more traffic calming there. But I just don't see the support for this project and I now don't see it right now. So why spend more money when I clearly don't see the community support for this project? Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, one other thing, if I may. Again, in the spirit of I'm not trying to take away funding from Councillor Arsenault's district. So I tried to steer the conversation about YMCA funding and about other funds and direction, and that I believe that any money not spent on this should be spent in Councillor Arsenault's district. And perhaps I can suggest two things without, I know it's not that I want to step on his toes, but clearly a lot of people are talking about the skateboard park and Benny. My son is skateboarding right now, so I'm a bit getting more focused on skateboard parks around the city. And clearly a number of people are asking for it, and that would definitely be a good site for an investment, perhaps, and it's his choice, his decision. I heard people wanting the dog run in Loyola Park, or perhaps something else of his choice. So I'm not trying to take this money away and put it in my district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McQueen. Mr. Perez?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Let's take perhaps a small step back. Let's remember some of the facts. We had a file at the November Council, which was adopted, talking about the shared street program and wanting to go forward and the deal with the city center. I raised some concerns, but I was willing to give it a chance. Last council in December 7th, pretty important council. We're talking about Godfrey, where we had YMCA. I had expressed reservations at the last council because a lot of the relevant information for this file, namely the recommended bidder's proposal, wasn't actually in the file with the agenda. And it was following my motion to postpone the file in December 7th at the regularly scheduled council meeting that we decided to withdraw it in order to give us a chance to be able to become aware of the proposal, become aware of the other proposals. And j'aimerais remercier les services justement de nous avoir fourni toute l'information suite au dernier conseil. J'avais demandé qu'on puisse avoir la proposition. Vous êtes revenu non seulement avec la proposition, mais avec évidemment le tableau d'analyse de toutes les soumissions. Donc, je vous remercie de nous avoir donné l'information pour qu'on puisse prendre une décision éclairée. But since then, and it goes to show how 2 weeks can be a long time, it was probably going to be adopted had I not raised the motion to postpone. And what we've seen since then is an opportunity to be able to speak to a few more residents, to some institutions. And what we've discovered, I mean, we just look at the questions that were raised today by the public, that there's some incomprehension as to the need. There's a misunderstanding, perhaps, of what is to be achieved. It was mentioned as well. There's been a lot of talk on social media, on Facebook about this. And I understand what Mr. Arsenault has said in reply to those questions, that this is the part where we're going to do consultation, right? This is the part where we're going to allow the community and the neighborhood to speak about the relevance and the necessity of the program. And I hear that, but I also believe that there has to be perhaps a little bit of legwork, a little bit of a buy-in. If everybody to whom this issue is raised has a reflex to say, well, why are we doing this? What's the objective? How is it going to work? When there isn't that, you know, kind of even openness to consider it, I think there's a problem. There's a problem where the people that presumably would benefit most, people on Godfrey, are raising some of these issues. I can understand the institutions, daycare on Grand, you know, the church raising a concern because it's going to impact them. And I understand also the opportunity that such a comprehensive consultation process would perhaps afford the community and the neighborhood to be able to evaluate a project. But there's a problem where from the get-go, there's strong opposition. Like I said, perhaps a little bit more legwork to try and rally, to explain. We could have maybe seen a little bit more, you know, questions or comments in support. That really didn't happen. Now, when we saw the details of this project, you know, to spend $105,000 on a consultation is a lot of money. I think the idea of a shared street is great. And I think there's different types of shared streets. We are all familiar with the shared street on Jean-Briand. That was simply a necessity out of safety. There are literally tens of thousands of university students walking from Côte-des-Neiges Metro to the University of Montreal campus. It made sense, and it seems to have really been a success and a good thing. This would have been a different type. There aren't tens of thousands of people walking in Godfrey. It would be an opportunity to do kind of having more space near off the park, you know, which is obviously quite quiet nonetheless. But that's kind of the different type, and I'm willing to consider that. But what we have to make sure is we cannot do this in a vacuum, and we have to ensure that we avoid another fiasco like the one we experienced last summer with Terrebonne, with the Terrebonne Street bike path. We can't simply, you know, turn the page and pretend that did happen. That was a wake-up call, I think, you know, for a lot of people within the community, and the community and NDGers and Côte-des-Neiges are looking at how we're proceeding. So we have to be, you know, above reproach. And that doesn't mean that we can't sometimes take decisions that perhaps go against certain, you know, preconceived ideas or concepts. But there has to be a minimal buy-in. There has to be a comprehensive project that we're willing to go forward. And I think that right now that doesn't happen. Daycares obviously are concerned. You know, there's an issue with potentially with the church. To spend $105,000 to do this consultation phase or for phase and transforming it in year one, I'm not, certain whether it's the best use of public funds. To term, it's going to cost potentially $800,000. Yes, City Center will, in fact, subsidize 3/4 of that. So, we can, in fact, spend less. I've heard Mr. Arsenault say, well, we don't have to expect to spend all that if it basically is not, if there isn't that social acceptability, that, community buy-in, then we'll just stop. We'll quote unquote cut our losses. And that's it. But I still think that, this contract, it's going to go to $100,000. It's, the way the firm is understandably going to act is they're going to, go on the assumption that it's going to go forward. And we're going to end up spending at least 3/4 of that sum, perhaps get some public consultation that we could get informally. I agree with you. It doesn't have the same methodology, but we're getting a sense of it right now. So I really, put this in the context, the backdrop, where we have a lack of underfunding from City Center. The last couple years, last 3 years, there's been complete slash of our, equalization payments, as I call them, for our capital works budget. We used to get another $15 million a year on top of what we get already for different projects. We're not getting that now. So that also has to weigh in the balance. And yes, it's $200,000. Now, unfortunately, so I have, I've raised my hesitations. I think that the postponement gave us an opportunity to do a reflection. And I just don't feel that when you kind of weigh the pros and the cons, that there's really enough to go on. And I think, unfortunately, that this project is another example, unfortunately, of the dysfunction that we have in our borough and that we've had over the last year. I heard the mayor earlier say that she was not aware of the project until November. I'm willing to take her at her word. I didn't see it. But somehow now we're seeing her trying to absolve herself of any connection with this file. Like was mentioned by Mr. Rochon, if she wasn't in favor of it, she didn't have to add it to the November agenda. She definitely didn't have to call a special counsel. We saw the little cross-examination she gave to our borough director to try and show that she wasn't aware. Now, I'm not of the opinion that only the borough mayor is the only person that can give a mandate to the services, in the sense that the services have programs, they have projects, and they do a lot of the work before it rises to the political sphere, to the mayor's office. Now, true, sometimes in some of those projects, they'll get an orientation, but we know that the difficulty and the lack of statutaire and statutory meetings that they've been having over the last year. I don't think the mayor should be the one telling us exactly where we should be doing our PRR, right? Our road recovery plan, right? She's not the one who gives every single mandate. She's not the one who tells the services where to put all the, all the speed bumps. No, the services go along with the infrastructure, with the programs, and at a certain point it becomes that. And she didn't have to add it to the agenda in November. I'll give another example. The Rock Hill file was a file where she decided not to, and I supported her for reasons of underfunding from City Center. But I'm just saying, we have the opportunity to make those decisions. And I raised on Friday, when I was asked whether I'm available for today, I raised the wisdom of having a special council meeting a few days before Christmas. From a transparency perspective, it's really not the best practice. And that's why I actually posted on a couple of NDG groups the actual meeting, the agenda, and the question period. I didn't give in my post any indication. Later on, after the question period was over, I posted a small video as to my thoughts and my concerns about it. And obviously other people did as well, and we've seen the results, but it could have been otherwise. So, I think that, we're a bit on a slippery slope here. Now, I have a concern, I'm going to close on this, Madam Mayor, that unfortunately, it's another example where a lot of work is done by the services that seemingly will not go forward. There's a lot of time and effort and resources that were used. There's a special counsel. There's cost to have the special counsel. There's back and forths. You know, we could have avoided this if there was less dysfunction, independently of when a person in the mayor's office became aware or not. From the moment that one becomes aware, well, from that moment forward, then we could take responsibility and make decisions accordingly. So unfortunately, I think that, you know, NDGers are losing an opportunity, because now we might lose the city center funding for such a shared street program that we could have maybe had otherwise in Côte-des-Neiges-NDG. So potentially we're going to lose that funding because of the management of this file. So unfortunately, from what I've heard, I'm not convinced. I have a lot of sympathies for the willingness of having such a project. I think it could have, had it been handled otherwise by different stakeholders, we would be in a different place. Alors malheureusement, je vois pas comment je peux appuyer ce contrat dans les circonstances, et ça me peine de le dire parce que je sais qu'il y a eu beaucoup d'efforts et de travail qui a été effectué par les services. Et maintenant, c'est comme perdu, peine perdue. On va probablement perdre le financement pour un tel programme de la ville-centre. On a un sous-investissement. Alors, lorsqu'on a des projets, lorsqu'on a des programmes, il faut en tirer bénéfice. Et à cause de la dysfonction de notre arrondissement, malheureusement, on n'a pas pu tirer avantage de cela. Et ça me désole. Merci.
Merci. Madame Popiano?
Merci beaucoup, Madame la mairesse. Écoutez, je veux faire 2 pouces sur les dits de M. Pérez. Effectivement, c'est dommage. Et c'est dommage parce que moi, j'ai 2 belles expériences en Côte-des-Neiges, parce que tout le monde semble l'oublier. L'autre place où on a utilisé le programme de rue piétonne et partagée, c'est la bretelle de Côte-des-Neiges qu'on piétonise temporairement pour créer la placette, qui a été effectivement un très, très grand succès. C'est la même chose, Jean-Briand, ou la placette au début du projet. Il y a eu, bien sûr, des doutes qui ont été exprimés. D'ailleurs, mes 2 collègues, autant M. Pérez que M. Rotran, se sont opposés farouchement, surtout pour la placette. Donc, ils ne voyaient pas l'utilité d'un tel aménagement. Mais je sens le besoin d'expliquer le fonctionnement de ces programmes qui sont gérés par la Ville-Centre. Donc, effectivement, c'est un apport que la Ville-Centre ramène à chaque idée, à chaque projet. Donc, la première phase, c'est la phase qu'on ramène au vote aujourd'hui, c'est de donner un contrat pour définir le projet avec le voisinage. Donc, c'est bon, j'entends mes collègues, oh, il n'y a pas eu de consultation. Oui, effectivement, parce que tu ne peux pas faire une consultation sur un projet qui n'est pas défini. Une rue piétonne et partagée peut prendre différentes formes. Ça peut être temporaire, ça peut être définitif, ça peut être avec un nombre X d'enlèvement du stationnement ou sans enlèvement du stationnement, avec une configuration particulière. Donc, la première mission d'un tel contrat qu'on donne à un organisme à but non lucratif qui a effectivement de l'expérience à définir ce type de projet, à bien le faire atterrir, à bien l'implanter dans le voisinage, c'est de définir le projet avec le voisinage. Et Madame Montgomery, vous savez très bien, parce que vous avez assisté, si ma mémoire est bonne, à 2 rencontres pour Jean-Briand, où vous avez vu le voisinage exprimer des inquiétudes. On essaie bien sûr de faire de la mitigation, on essaie de travailler avec nos partenaires. Un tel type de projet ne peut pas être acclamé dans un voisinage parce que ça change les habitudes de vie. Et avec tout le respect que je dois, surtout à mon collègue Rotran, qui a autant d'expérience que tous nous ensemble, et sans vouloir le taquiner, sans que ce soit un commentaire péjoratif. Mais vous savez très bien, il y a un historique aussi à Côte-des-Neiges-NDG. Je ne veux même pas me rappeler du parc du Triangle ou des parcs de Triangle. Je vous entends, on dépasse beaucoup d'argent, Écoutez, ça nous a coûté 40 millions de dollars pour acheter le terrain quand on aurait pu le planifier dès le début, mettre des réserves financières que vous et les administrations où vous avez été présents, vous n'avez pas fait. 40 millions. Je ne parle pas de l'investissement que l'arrondissement Côte-des-Neiges-NDG, toute notre PTI pendant 3 ou 4 années a été investi dans le parc du Triangle. Ben, écoutez, on souhaite aussi faire des milieux de vie qui sont intéressants. Et mon collègue McQueen, je comprends ses réserves aussi. Je sais qu'il est très sensible aux opinions de voisinage, mais on peut être visionnaire, on peut voir dans le temps, parce que ce ne sont pas des projets qui se font aujourd'hui et demain où on enlève le stationnement et puis on rentre dans la vie du groupe. Au contraire, ça peut être un espace culturel extrêmement intéressant. Il y a l'espace Knox. J'ai eu la chance d'assister 2 fois à des spectacles organisés par le Black Worship Theatre, qui était absolument extraordinaire. Ça peut être l'été temporaire où le théâtre peut sortir dans la rue. On ferme la rue pour donner la possibilité aux gens aux alentours. La rue Montcalm n'est pas loin, les gens vont voir un spectacle de quartier, pas des gens qui viennent en voiture, des gens qui vivent dans le quartier. On essaie de créer une vie de quartier, on essaie de changer, on est ambitieux, c'est sûr. Ne faire rien, ça crée rien là. Hein? Quand on fait rien, tu investis rien, ça crée rien là. Bon, ben, écoutez, on reste au même point. Donc, bien que mon collègue Arsenault a quitté le projet Montréal, je suis au-dessus de la partisanerie. Moi, tout ce que je souhaite, c'est apporter dans notre quartier une autre façon de voir les choses, des espaces culturels, des endroits où les gens se parlent, ils sortent l'été. On veut avoir des quartiers qui sont vivants, pas des quartiers où on rentre, on laisse la voiture devant et on sort. Et on peut le faire. Donc, c'est pour ça que j'ai appuyé le sommaire décisionnel qui est ramené à l'ordre du jour et je suis tout à fait en accord avec mon collègue Arsenault. Premièrement, que ça pourrait être un projet intéressant. Il faut le voir, il faut le définir en première étape. C'est ce qu'on souhaite faire à travers le sommaire décisionnel qu'on vote. Donc, il faut le définir. Il faut consulter, il faut voir ensemble, travailler en commun. C'est un travail commun des résidents aux alentours et de la compagnie de BNL qui a l'expertise. Puis, si ça ne fonctionne pas, ben, écoutez, ce n'est pas de l'argent perdu, c'est de l'argent investi dans une ville qu'on souhaite qu'elle soit du 21e siècle et qu'on ne reste pas dans le 20e siècle. Merci beaucoup, Madame la mairesse.
Merci, Madame Piano. Et maintenant, Monsieur Arsenault.
Merci, Madame la mairesse. Je vois les mains levées des collègues Perez et Rotran, puis je me demandais s'ils souhaitaient intervenir de nouveau avant mon intervention. Oui, non?
Monsieur Rotran, est-ce que votre main est levée, Monsieur Rotran?
No. Oh, I'm sorry, not on purpose. Excuse me, I didn't lower it. No, je comprends, M. Arsenault veut faire son réplique. Ça, c'est ce qu'il dit?
OK, oui. Allez-y.
Ouais. Ben, en fait, c'est assez rare qu'on parle de droit de réplique ici en arrondissement, mais étant donné que je suis le proposeur, this has been a very interesting experience over the last few weeks, and for a whole slew of reasons that I'd like to unpack with my colleagues a little bit, and with those of you of the public that have joined us. I've heard a lot of interesting things. I've seen a lot of interesting emails, and I feel like there's some concrete examples of why change is so difficult. I guess I could start with a few points just regarding this concern about consultation, this constant refrain that people were not consulted. The document that we are going to be voting on momentarily mentions the word participation, participatory, co-creation, consultation, consultative. Those words are mentioned almost 70 times. 70 times. This is a consultative process unlike virtually any that we've done in the borough, at least in recent memory. So it is a different way of doing things. And I want to thank, je tiens surtout à remercier ma collègue Popianou pour son intervention, non seulement en appui, mais son intervention qui représente vraiment ce que je pense est la façon de faire dans le 21e siècle. Une meilleure façon de faire avec les outils que nous avons maintenant à notre disposition et sachant, connaissant le désir des résidents d'avoir leur mot à dire et pas juste chaque 4 ans. Now, I hear what people are saying. I think a lot of the way that people feel about a given project is the result of what they read or hear about it first. Councillor Rotron said that he's received a lot of emails from people in the neighborhood. Well, with all due respect, I think he presented that a little backwards, in that he sent emails out to people in the neighborhood because he didn't like the project. And as a result, some folks heard about it from him before they heard about it from anyone who's in favor of the project. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. There's no project until the residents decide there is. That's the point of consultation. Now, I understand that the city and the administration in general have been criticized oftentimes for the way we consult. That's not the way we've done things in Loyola. Last year, we had a wonderful consultation process where over 450 people turned up over the span of a few months to talk about what they would like for our neighborhood parks. Now, we've been able to integrate some of those things into our planning, others not so much, which just goes to show that following up on consultations is often where we run into the biggest challenges. But at its core, we had this process that reached out to people and we said, you know what, we don't want to do anything until we've gotten you involved. That's the way we think we should operate. That's what I see in this project. Yes, there's a preliminary concept. That happens, but it's a point of departure. I think it's really a question of how it's been spun to suggest that this is something, as Councillor Rotron has said on multiple occasions, this is something that we just want to shove down people's throats, which I think is, frankly, it's an insult to anyone who believes in real consultation. I'm on record as saying that I'd be following the process very closely to ensure that citizen feedback is incorporated into any experiment. I could have sworn I heard Mayor Montgomery say the same thing at one point, but I won't speak for her. So I think we're seeing what happens when people jump to conclusions, and that those conclusions, rightly or wrongly, are reinforced by people with authority, including elected officials. This also holds true for what my colleague McQueen said. Now, Peter and I have often differed on this question, specifically the pertinence of social media commentary with regard to projects. I don't believe that Facebook is the place for real consultation. I don't think that social media discussions happen in a healthy way for the most part. I think that while there are many great things that happen on neighborhood Facebook groups, for example, discussions about politics are not one of them. They tend to become very toxic very quickly. Nuance gets lost in the process, just like it has here, where it's been painted out to be, you know, the war on cars and we're coming for your parking. And if we had it our way, we'd just eliminate cars from the entire Loyola district and put bikes everywhere, even in the middle of February. It's half baked. It's incredible to hear people saying that. This is a project that's been shown to work in other neighborhoods, and something that we've benefited from in CDN-NDG that Councillor Popianou rightly spoke of, because it's been such a success. So with all due respect to my colleague McQueen, I don't make my decisions, I don't take my positions based on the apparent popularity of something on Facebook. I think that's a very dangerous way to represent the public. I think that Facebook can be used to alert people to events, to opportunities to really dive in to real discussions. And I think that the advantage of holding proper consultations, including with this nonprofit, is precisely that we create an environment where collaboration is the order of the day instead of throwing up obstacles, instead of obstructionism. And again, Councillor Rotron seems intent on pointing out that this is a company that first and foremost is known for doing other projects. Yeah, it's an organization that has worked on consultative urban redesign projects. The two go hand in hand. You shouldn't have one without the other. Just like we do better when we consult on any number of projects or policies. I also, and I've said it before today, but I'll say it again, I do think that drawing a link between this and the Terrebonne file is unreasonable, to say the least. Now, I respect Councillor Perez's intervention and his positions. He's been concerned from the beginning. He's been skeptical from the beginning on certain aspects, and that's okay. We obviously disagree on that, but I respect the approach. But to say, as Councillor Rotron has, and as Councillor Rotron has clearly planted in the minds of many residents, that this is Terrebonne waiting to happen all over again is simply being disconnected from reality. Terrebonne, we did not consult on Terrebonne. I admitted that we didn't consult on Terrebonne, just as many of my colleagues did, and we saw the results of that and how it didn't work out. The whole point of this file is to not repeat the mistakes of the past. The whole point of this file is to engage in a depoliticized civic discussion about what we could do with this beautiful corner of the neighborhood that really is a hidden gem. So I understand that some folks are skeptical. I think that for anything that involves doing things differently in the neighborhood or doing differently in the city, those who speak up, and again, your thoughts are absolutely legitimate. I'm not trying to downplay that for even half a second. The ones who tend to speak up before these things actually happen are the ones that are afraid of what could change. And I understand that. We've seen it in other neighborhoods in the city. And this is all the more so at a time when people are scared for reasons that have nothing to do with this project. But people are scared. People are extra stressed. It's been a terrible year on so many fronts. I get that. I feel the same way. I'm ready for this year to end. I'm ready for us to get our vaccinations and be able to actually see each other in person. I can't wait, because the best things that happen in our neighborhood happen when we can come together. And that's what happened when we consulted on the future of our parks in Loyola. You know, hundreds of people getting involved and saying, okay, I want this, I'm afraid of that, but let's sit down and listen to each other. That's when the magic happens. And that's what we have an opportunity to do with this file. And again, I can't insist on this enough. It says in the file, in the contract, the call for tenders that was put out, that the borough reserves the right to cut it short at any point. That includes after the rounds of consultation, but before we engage in any actual changes to the street. That means that if we decide to consult and the residents absolutely want to have nothing to do with it, then we don't have to spend on a first experimental phase of the project. So I do think that if we vote down this file, we would be missing a golden opportunity to actually walk the talk on consultation. I don't think that you can criticize a lack of consultation in some files and then block a consultation for another. And to those who have said that consultation is expensive and it costs us money, yeah, we spent tens of thousands of dollars on the Loyola Parks consultations, and it was worth every penny, and I would gladly do it again. I'm convinced that we need to start budgeting more consistently for consultations so that we can plan these things with residents ahead of time, instead of arriving at the point for some projects and having people ask, wait a second, why weren't we given the heads up? So I think that this is, as far as what this offers to do in terms of getting residents involved in not repeating the mistakes that we made with Terrebonne, I think that this is an exemplary file. I think that we need to get people into the same room, get the politicians out of it for the most part, perhaps encourage some politicians to focus on bringing change to their own districts instead of fear-mongering in others, and let people speak about their experience of the neighborhood and what they'd like to see or not see. Compromises come up and solutions come up, popular solutions come up when we get people into the same room. That's the beauty of consultation. That's the beauty of not having politicians, be it myself or anyone else on this council, say that we should do a certain thing or should not do a certain thing. My position on this file is that the decision should really be with citizens, but not just the citizens that hear about it on Facebook, are misinformed on Facebook, and then get upset about something that's not actually going to happen. I think that we need to get people in the same room. We need to make sure that everyone has the facts, and anyone who looks at this file will get the facts. Anyone who's reached out to me over the last few weeks has gotten the initial concept, and I would love to share the consultation that's being proposed. But we need to start from the same baseline, and the same baseline is precisely what's contained in this file. So I truly hope that this will not be the victim of, I truly hope that this file will not be the victim of fear-mongering and inconsistent positions. I think that would be quite a loss for the neighborhood. And I can't emphasize this enough, even if we hold the consultations and the majority of residents decide that they don't want anything, for me, that's a legitimate outcome for a consultation process. That's why we hold consultations. To say that, well, people before the consultation said that they didn't even want it when there hasn't been a real consultation, I think we're getting into this whole like logical game of, do we do a pre-consultation for the consultation? Perhaps we could have done a pre-consultation for the consultation. You know, like at that point, it never stops. We can go as far back as we want. So I really hope that people will actually give consultation a chance. It's a kind of local democracy that we do not practice in our borough anywhere near enough, and that I've sought to do in Loyola over the past 3 years. And on those occasions, I've welcomed the support of my colleagues. I've welcomed the support of the mayor, who let me take the ball and run with it when it came to consulting for our local parks in Loyola. So I think I've said all I need to say. This is a golden opportunity. Even if folks decide, you know what, we're happy with things the way they are, I still think it's worth consulting so that it can be the public who says that, our citizens who say that, instead of the politicians. And on that note, I encourage all of my colleagues to vote for this file. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Merci, Monsieur Vautrin, vous avez un point de privilège?
Ms. Montgomery, I can accept in a democracy that Mr. Arsenault and I would disagree about the value of this program, or whether consultation means you need to have the citizen buy-in before you vote a contract of $105,000, or whether it's okay to spend money to consult people on something they never asked for in the first place. What I don't accept, and my question of privilege, is that Mr. Arsenault seems to imply it's illegitimate for me to respond to NDG residents. When residents, and there are a lot of them who reach out to me, and particularly since the Terrebonne fiasco, a lot of NDG residents contact me constantly. When they write to me, when they call me, when they ask me about a project, they say, is this going to affect our neighborhood? I have my doubts about it. I respond, and I cannot in any way stop someone from sharing the information I've shared with them. Now, I understand that Mr. Arsenault is complaining about the fact that too many NDG residents found out about this and have expressed their fears. We're seeing that in the question period. I didn't put up anyone to asking a question if that's what Mr. Arsenault is implying, and neither do I want it understood by anybody listening to this that anything I did is illegitimate. I'm a counselor in the borough, just like Mr. Arsenault or anyone else. Citizen asks him a question, you answer, regardless whether it's in your district, the next district, or somewhere else in the borough. I don't interfere in Mr. Arsenault's district, but however, when residents ask me about this project, I answered them. So instead of implying somehow that it's wrong for me to do that, it's a question of debate. The members of council will vote on what we heard here today and will decide either to grant this contract or not. So I'd like Mr. Arsenault to make sure that the public understands I'm just doing my job, and I want him to make clear that it's not illegitimate for me to answer people.
Are you asking him to withdraw that, Mr. Arsenault?
Yes, as a matter of fact, it would be classy if he did.
Madam Mayor, on the question of privilege, I don't know what Mr. Rotron is reading into my comments, but I think that I made a legitimate point about us experimenting in some districts and not others. And as Mr. Rotron himself has said on many occasions, he often tries to yield to the local councillor when it comes to a given project in that councillor's district. So he argued his point more to say that that's not what he meant, and he attributed to me an intention. That's not at all what I said, and so I really don't see the relevance of this question of privilege.
Excuse me, Ms. Montgomery, Mr. Arsenault said clearly that the citizens only wrote in their questions or only responded after getting my email, that I somehow, and he used the word fear-mongering, although he didn't mention my name, that somehow I've created this community opposition. On the contrary, when you don't consult and people find out at the last minute and they begin to ask questions, it's up to all of us. I'm sure you had the same thing, Ms. Montgomery. I'm sure Mr. Perez did as well, with people contacting us, and we did our best to give them the information that's available, including the public information on the website. So I felt that the way Mr. Arsenault said that would lead a reasonable listener to think that somehow I did something illegal, not illegal, illegitimate. And it's that I want him to clarify that he didn't mean.
I will happily clarify that point. I have in my inbox an email that was forwarded to me by at least one resident that includes an email from Councillor Rotron to that resident, and I imagine others, presenting his position on this project. So I'm not saying that he told people to write into this council with questions. I'm saying that he clearly encouraged residents to get in touch with a mistaken understanding of this project. And I would be happy to submit that email, to table that on this file if it can reassure Councillor Rotron that I'm merely stating what has arrived in my own inbox and not any other intention regarding the question period.
Look, I'm not going to belabor this. He used the word mistaken. When I give my point of view to someone, it's just as legitimate as your point of view, Mr. Arsenault. We just don't happen to agree. It's the Borough Council by vote that decides which direction it wants to go. There's no such thing as mistaken. That's your...
Madame la Mairesse.
All right, I'm not going to belabor
Okay.
this.
Monsieur Rotron, I think you've made your point, as has Mr. Arsenault. Madame Popiano, avez-vous quelque chose?
Non, merci. C'est
Okay.
Madam
Bon,
Mayor,
Monsieur,
if I may, just because Councillor Rotron slipped in a final word, we're entitled to our own opinions, Councillor Rotron. We're not entitled to our own facts. And some of the things that have been said about this file, I think, have conflated the facts to a degree that either suggests a misunderstanding of the file or a desire not to see a real consultation. So again, I'm just responding to what I received in my inbox from residents, and I don't see any question of privilege there.
okay, thank you. I think the two of you will have to agree to disagree. Mr. McQueen, you had a question of clarification. Now, I'm not sure, is that allowed at this point?
I said whether
Yeah,
It's
it
nothing
was
to do
whether
with the
it-
councillors
no,
here.
Mr. McQueen, you can't intervene now. It was the.
Okay, I'm going to intervene after the vote.
Okay, so I would like us to go to a vote now. So I'll just call your names. I think that's easiest for Madame Falardeau-Boulet. Pardon. Mr. Arsenault?
In favor.
Madame Popiano?
Oui.
Mr. McQueen?
Against.
Mr. Perez?
Regrettably against.
Sorry? What?
Regrettably against.
Regrettably. Okay. Mr. Rotan?
No.
Et j'abstiens.
Fait.
Alors, c'est...
C'est rejeté
la
à
mo-
la majorité. C'est ça?
Exact.
Parfait.
Alors, avec ça, l'ordre du jour...
I would
est-
just like to make a quick comment. It has nothing to do with the proceedings here. It's about the churches. Maybe some people were unclear with my statements. The two churches that closed in my district were not of the same denomination as Knox or Kensington Church. It's a completely separate entity. And I'd also like to say that I understand it's a struggle. All churches are trying to not close,
Okay,
and I
Mr.
respect that
McQueen.
struggle.
Okay, that's not necessary now. So with that, I would like to wish everyone a very happy holiday. All the best for 2021. I know 2020 has been very difficult, and I hope all of you stay healthy, wash your hands, keep your distance, and please don't gather over the holidays. It can save a life. Alors, merci beaucoup, joyeuses fêtes et bonne année.
Happy holidays, everybody. See you next year.
Joyeuses fêtes et bonne année, tout le monde.
Joyeuses fêtes et bonne année
Merci.
tout le monde.
Merci
Bonne année.
beaucoup, Monsieur le
Au
Président,
revoir.
Julie.
Stay safe. On
Bonne
va
année
vous
à tout le
voir.
monde dans les services. Merci.